Good morning, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique, Director and Founder of Spanish United. Today, we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hello. My name's Matthew Flavel, and I'm the Alls Gothi of the Astrau Folk Assembly. That basically means the high priest of the Astrau Folk Assembly.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yes, I contacted you because I saw an interview on The Guardian talking about the last whites only church, and it kind of caught my interest, and I wanted you to explain what is your organization or Volk Assembly is about for the audience to know.
Sure. So we practice a religion called Austru, and that's basically worshiping the indigenous gods of Europe. Most people would know those as the Norse gods, such as Odin, Thor, Balder, Frey. Um, So we practice that. And in doing so, we believe that those gods are our most ancient ancestors and we're connected to them by our ancestry. So we're an ethnic faith.
Hmm.
And we've been around practicing for almost 27, turn of the year, it'll be 27 years for us.
Oh wow, awesome, awesome. And why do you feel that there is controversy surrounding your ethnic faith? Because I'm very familiar with the neo-pagan, Germanic Nordic religions that are like in many European countries that are starting to emerge now. Because as you know, Europe is post-Christian, and it's not really a big deal. But for some type of reason, anything that's considered like uh, pro or pan-European, people tend to get riled up about it. So why do you think that is?
I think that it goes along with the sensationalism of the news these days. I think anything that involves race or anything that involves a perceived racism from specifically white people or Europeans is, I don't know, very attractive to journalists out to get a story that a lot of people will be interested in. And the Guardian was very dishonest in the way they dealt with us.
I see. Okay, because like I said, when I saw the interview, it kind of seemed a little bit strange because the gentleman that was speaking, he was an older gentleman. I forgot what his name was. He kind of gave like a maybe a bad representation of your movement, and that's why a lot of people maybe were concerned about that. So was he like a former leader of the movement that left or got excommunicated? Who was he?
No, the older gentleman they had on there, they had a very brief segment that was actually about us and our church, and they had quite a bit of it about one of our detractors, a more universalist group called the True Community, and that's, I don't know, they're extremely different from who we are, and they've always been very opposed to who we are and what we do.
Okay, so according to what I saw in an interview, there were officially two Ashkaru groups. There's one which is your organization, which is like the mainstream, and then there's the other one, which is kind of like a splinter group that kind of leads more towards white nationalist views. Am I correct?
No, the so and I'm trying to think of who you saw in the program. I know they interviewed the leader of the True Community, and that's an
Yeah, his yeah, I
extremely far left group.
yeah, I found that his name is Stefan McNailen. Is that the guy?
Oh, no, no, no. Okay, so I was thinking of the other gentleman they interviewed. Stephen McNallen is actually the founder of the True Folk Assembly and a very good friend of mine. And certainly, the media finds his point of view very controversial, but I don't see that to be the case in real life interactions with folks. It just seems to be something the media likes to play up.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, because like I said, in that brief segment, when he was speaking, like just briefly, he was talking about, fighting for
Mhm.
his race, being for his race, etc. So that could be interpreted as being white nationalist. I personally, I'm very neutral when it comes to ethnic issues.
Mhm.
It all depends on how people interpret it. Like my organization, Spanish United, we are a organization that's Hispanic first, so meaning that we advocate for Hispanic preservation of the language, of the culture, of the identity, because as with white people, Hispanics are under extreme pressure, by both the left and the right, conservative and liberal, to assimilate it into American culture because Hispanics are growing demographically, and it's like we're kind of seen like public enemy number one when it comes to immigration and demographic change. So I do empathize, with what he was saying, but like with anything, if you don't read or see the whole thing, it could be misinterpreted as something negative.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's what they were counting on. The clip that they used was something of him speaking to people that were already very familiar and not, giving a public interview to people that didn't have that context. But yeah, he's always been a very strong advocate for us, for our people, for our traditions, and for maintaining that. And I think I certainly support that. Of no matter what race someone comes from, they're having pride in who they are, and the preservation of their people and their traditions, I think, is a noble thing all around.
Okay, so as far as your organization is concerned, is it open to anyone that is of European background, or do they have to be like specifically of Germanic or Nordic stock to join?
Well, one of the reasons that a lot of people find it controversial is our use of the term white. And we say that because there's a lot of people that can trace ancestry back to Europe, but would never self-identify as the word white. Most of our membership is in the United States, though we do have international members. And in the United States, we kind of all know what that means when you click a box for a survey or for a job application.
Right.
Um, so that's why we choose to use that word. It's pan-European, certainly in that sense. We have Southern Europeans, we have folks from the Mediterranean, from Eastern Europe, as well as Germanics in the Astrau focusing.
Okay, so basically the membership is open to anyone that comes from a European background. Doesn't matter if it's Nordic, Iberian, Mediterranean, or Slavic, correct?
Absolutely, as long as they're in it identifiably so. Absolutely.
So someone like myself that comes from a Iberian and also an English background, even though I do identify as Hispanic, physically I do look like a Mediterranean person. So if I wanted to join your movement, I could do so.
No, because I think it'd be disingenuous at that point, because you clearly identify as a person who is Hispanic. There's other faith movements that are more reflective of that ethnicity.
So even though I am of even though physically in terms of appearance I could pass as a Southern European, but because I identify as Hispanic, I wouldn't be able to join. Is that correct?
No, because that's clearly who you identify as. If you didn't identify as that and you were, genetically a Spaniard, then certainly you could.
Oh, okay, all right. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, so how would you, for example, be able like to reconcile with the outside community of maybe any type of stigma that people may have towards, the Ashkarot movement? So like, how would you reach out or like talk to people about any type of, misconception that people may have?
Well, first, personally and openly, I hope anybody out here that hears your interview and does have questions reaches out to me on the website. Matt Flavel at runestone.org is my email address. We're very open to talking to people. The media portrays us one way, but I guess the source of the interview that you saw was because we had opened our third Hof, which is basically the name for our houses of worship.
Mhm.
So we have 3 of those now, and we've been very active in each of those communities. We're very involved in charity as far as specifically food distribution. We like to give out presents to local children and do kind of a hot chocolate story time during the Yule season for, anybody in that community. we've tried to be very open to whoever is in the communities that we're in, and we've developed really good relationships with those folks. That's why the story in Murdoch, Minnesota, there was so disappointing. We have an amazing relationship with members of that community.
Because I tried to reach out to the mayor of Murdoch, but they declined to meet with me. I'm assuming because of the whole interview, it seems that the town of Murdoch kind of got like a negative image of what the town is.
Yeah, I feel bad for those people. It's a very small town, and they certainly didn't ask for all the negative media attention. That's very unfortunate to those folks. I'm sure they're just trying to run their town. That's a town of 300 and something people. They certainly didn't expect to get the press trying to make such a big story out of their town.
Oh wow, that's kind of small. Like I know that anything that is under 1,000 people is technically considered a village. Because I used to live in a little town in Michigan called Mecosta, which I think was probably like 400 people, and it was very very small. Like the city hall, the library, and the post office were all on the same street.
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing with Murdoch. It's a very small little community.
Okay, perfect. So, I wanted to ask about the practices that your religion, like focuses on. Is it more like on shamanism or more like nature worship, like similar to what many people like practice like in the Americas, or is it like similar to what the pre-Christian religions of Europe used to be? If you could elaborate on that.
Um, Conceptually, it's exactly what the pre-Christian Europeans used to do, but brought forward into a modern context. It's very much a worship of our gods and making offerings and exchanging energies with our gods. There's certainly a high respect for nature, but I wouldn't say there's a nature worship per se. I think you could
Okay.
certainly describe it as ancestor worship. We honor and worship our ancestors, and those, in our understanding, our most ancient ancestors are the gods.
Okay, it's kind of similar to what the Chinese do with ancestor worship. Like, they worship their ancestors, they venerate them, like they bring them like gifts and do like, things like on the Chinese New Year. So it's kind of similar in that
In
aspect.
that aspect, absolutely, that's something that I don't know. I'm always very impressed by when East Asians are they're very big on venerating their ancestors. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, like I live close to an area called San Gabriel, which is basically like China, but it's all nice and pretty much like a suburb. And I know that during the Chinese New Year and during the lunar calendar, it becomes very festive, and they dress up in costumes, and it's actually pretty interesting. It's like I always like to go to those things because I always believe that when people engage other cultures or try to have an open mind, that will reduce tension, at the same time bring any type of animosity to go out the window. Because I believe, as you do, to keep our heritage, to keep our roots, but at the same time I believe in having non-confrontational and cordial relations with the outside world that's not part of our group. So I think it's very important that even though we can keep our separate beliefs and traditions, etc., but I always believe it's always good to be cordial and getting to know one another, so that way any stigma that people may have of you or have of me, can go out the window. Because unfortunately, with the way our climate is, because of political correctness, it's like people are afraid to engage with each other, talk with each other, because people are afraid to speak what they feel, or even to be open about who they are.
I could not agree more. That's something we believe very strongly in. I think that the best way for different races and ethnicities of people to interact is when everyone at the table is proud of their culture and allowed to be proud of where they come from. And you see conflict when people are made to feel uncomfortable or unworthy of being proud of where they come from. I think that's the source of a lot. I find when we interact with other cultures, certainly as the Astrau Folk Assembly, we get along fine. We get along fine with all races of people will get along very fine with us. The people who don't are the extremely politically correct or far left, usually college age white people in the United States.
Right,
They
right.
get along with us far less than everyone else. We've had very good interactions with different ethnic communities.
And what's interesting is that the far left, tends not to get along with me because, even though I am a civil activist, I do not adhere with a lot of the things that the far left does because, in my opinion, I believe the far left excludes Hispanic people in terms of everything. It's like they're pretty much for, Black Lives Matter, for Antifa, for LGBT, but when it comes to Hispanic people, it's like, we don't matter. So that's one thing that I don't really like about the far left is that they seem to advocate for everybody else, but when it comes to Hispanics, it's like we don't have any value. So I understand and I have the same sentiment with what you feel about, the radical far left is that if you don't agree with them, they don't like you. And I've gone through that myself and I'm not anywhere a conservative or a liberal. I consider myself to be a centrist because I feel that both sides have their points and both sides have their flaws. So it's always good to be impartial. But yeah, I definitely agree with you that the far left they tend to be a little bit extreme in a lot of their dealings with other people.
Well, and it's very unfortunate. They talk about tolerance, and they're very open minded as long as you believe exactly the same thing they believe. And the second you don't, all of a sudden that tolerance goes away.
Oh, I know, and like I said, I am a Hispanic, and a lot of the far left don't like me because I don't adhere to a lot of the things that they believe. I believe that they're trying to group Hispanics as either black or trying to make Hispanics disappear as ethnicities. That's something that I've noticed a lot with the far left is that they don't like Hispanics. It's like they don't have a problem using us, to exploit us. But when it comes to advocating for us, it's like they don't really care to do anything for us. So, which I think is pretty sad because if one is going to be for tolerance, you have to be for everybody. Like I myself, even though I may not agree with a lot of things with certain groups of people that are different from me, I always like to reach out to them. Like I've spoken with people that are from the far left to the far right. I've spoken to different types of people, and I always like to give them airtime because I believe that in order for us to have a mutual understanding, we always have to listen to what the other person has to say. I'm not here to dictate to you or to judge you or to criticize you, even though I may have my biases, my beliefs, but my job as a journalist and also as a civil activist of a Hispanic organization is to listen to the point of views of everybody. Like that's what I used to do when I used to be a tutor. Like I would always tell my students, don't take my word for it. Question everything that you see and hear. Investigate, research, have critical thinking, and then use evidence and facts to come to your own conclusions about what is fact and what is not fact. And I feel that is something that is missing in academia. It's missing in civil discussion. It's like when people, make it so political, so personal, when people start making personal insults and throwing money at each other, I just feel that it doesn't get anybody anywhere. So I feel that, we need to be like civil adults and, listen to each other. Like what I'm doing with you right now. Like I'm listening to you. I'm not interrupting you. I'm letting you have your time to explain, and to also to learn about what your movement is about.
Well, I really appreciate that. I think that when people don't do like you were saying, I think the biggest thing that's sacrificed is the truth. I think when journalists approach something with an agenda and try to create a story rather than uncover a story, I think it's very unfortunate because it misleads a lot of folks and it gets a whole lot of people. It preys on people's fears, And
Mhm.
specifically because I would imagine you have a largely Hispanic audience.
Mhm.
They targeted the Hispanic community in Murdoch, which again, it's such a small town. I think that comprises maybe 10 people. But they tried to make that segment of the society very scared of us, as if we were going to hurt them in some way. And that's awful. I could not be more offended that they would make other people feel scared and uncomfortable of us. We've done a great job of rectifying that in the community, and we have some great Hispanic friends in that community. But it's unfortunate when the media feeds on fear like that.
Yeah, because unfortunately, because of the past administration and because of certain segments of the country, particularly like in the Rust Belt, which used to be the industrial center of America, but after General Motors and the big companies went under, it's like a lot of the white blue collar people. Not all, but a lot of them have been fed a lot of rhetoric from the far right that Hispanics are invaders are here to destroy your way of life. So I could understand why a lot of people have a fear of anything, like you said, that promotes any type of European kindred or whatever, because you have a segment within white people that want to preserve their culture sincerely, as they use it as a racist agenda to exclude people, or in many cases try to expel people. So I'm very glad that you're reaching out to the Hispanic community in your area, because it's like Hispanophobia. One of the things that I talk about in my organization, in my movement, is that Hispanophobia is a very rampant problem. And in many places, you don't really hear about it because since Hispanics, many are undocumented or whatever. It's like a lot of them have a fear to report any hate crime committed against them because they are feared of being deported. So it's like a lot of Hispanics suffer in silence, and Hispanics being the largest minority, we suffer a lot of abuse from a lot of people, but you don't really hear about it in the media or on the news because a lot of Hispanics are fearful of speaking up or standing up for themselves. So what I'm doing with my organization is speaking about Hispanophobia, talking that it's something that is very real. It's not something that started like 5 years ago. To address it, how to combat it, and how to deal with it, and how to educate people, any myths that people may have of Hispanic people. Because a lot of people think that Hispanic is brown or from Mexico. But as with Europeans, Hispanics are not monolithic. We come from different countries, different races. Hispanic could be European, African, Asian, Native American, or a mixture of all of those. Different religions. You have Hispanics that are Roman Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, pagan, atheist, etc. But what unites us as a collective is that we speak the same language, we have the same culture, same identity. So that's one thing that I'm doing with Spanish United, is to dispel any myths, and at the same time to work with other organizations that may feel marginalized or persecuted by mainstream society.
I think that's certainly a noble thing to be a voice for your people and to dispel myths. I think wherever things land on political issues, the truth is always a good thing. And making decisions based on a fair understanding of other people is always preferable. No matter what conclusions one comes to, they need to be based on fairness and truth.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one thing that I'm doing is, seeking out the truth, wanting to know about, what a particular group of people is about, so that way I could better understand them. Because I myself, I'm very open about learning about different groups, different cultures, different religions, even though I may not agree with it. But I feel that if there is a mutual respect and a mutual understanding, I believe that could create a lot of harmony between people. Because we don't have to agree with what you believe, what I believe, what I practice. But if there is a mutual understanding, and also to understand what people are about, I think it'll definitely be beneficial to both parties.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I also wanted to ask, do you have like any chapters like in Latin America or in Spain by any chance, or is it like mostly in the Nordic countries or in English speaking countries?
So we have had membership in Spain. We have a member currently in Uruguay. We have had Brazilian members. Um, we currently have a few members in Italy. We have a strong membership in Sweden and in the more Nordic countries. But yeah, we've had members in Mediterranean Europe and also in South America. We haven't had too many members in Central America, but we have had South American members.
What about the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Cuba?
No, as of yet, we have not had that.
Yeah, because I know that in those three countries you have a lot of European people that live there. You know, it's like
Absolutely.
those three islands are unique from the rest of the Caribbean because those are the only three islands where Europeans actually settle in large numbers and form the majority, unlike the other Caribbean islands.
Perhaps one day we'll get some applicants from there, but as of yet, we haven't. You're right; they do have ethnically European populations there that both originally and expatriates that have moved there. So you're right on that.
Awesome, perfect. I wanted to ask one more final question before we go. Um, how would you describe you know getting to get your faith across to people that are interested in getting to know about the astral faith? Like, how would you go about it?
I think the best options are look us up on YouTube, honestly, because then you see a lot of videos of what we do, of our gatherings, of our people celebrating and worshiping, and I think that gives you a really good impression. I also think going to our website www.runestone.org gives you access to a lot of information. Certainly, our newsletters going back many many years. I think that'll give you a good, and it also has points of contact. If there's somebody in your local area that you want to contact, it can direct you to people that would be happy to answer questions. We're always very happy to answer anyone's questions.
Okay, perfect. That concludes the podcast. I want to thank you very much for coming on my show. As soon as I'm done, I will email you and text you the link, and you could share it with your community and with other people.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
Not a problem. Have yourself a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye bye.